The warning. Captain Jake stood in the dimly lit hallway of the alien fortress, his breath coming out in quick, shallow bursts. His team was behind him, their weapons raised and ready for whatever danger lay ahead. The mission had seemed simple enough at first: rescue the alien queen, a leader of a distant galaxy, who had been captured by her own people. But now, as they approached the holding cells, the weight of the situation began to settle in. Something wasn't right. The air was thick with tension, and the feeling of being watched was almost unbearable. Jake turned to his second-in-command, Sergeant Harris, who had a grim expression on his face. "You feel that?" Jake whispered. Harris nodded, his eyes scanning the surroundings. "Yeah. We're not alone." Jake motioned for his team to move forward, keeping his hand on his weapon, but even as he walked, something gnawed at him. This was no ordinary mission. This was bigger than anything they had faced before. They reached the door to the Queen's cell. It was heavily guarded, but Jake and his team had come prepared. With a few quick moves, they disabled the security system and forced the door open. Inside, in the center of the dimly lit room, sat the alien queen, her back turned toward them. She was silent, motionless, and for a moment, Jake thought she might not be aware of their presence. "Your Majesty," Jake called out softly, stepping forward. The queen's head snapped around, her eyes locking onto his with a cold intensity. She was beautiful in a way that was almost unsettling, her alien features delicate yet commanding. Her skin shimmered with a strange, iridescent glow, and her long, dark hair seemed to ripple with the faintest of movements, like it was alive. But it was her eyes that captured Jake's attention. There was a sadness in them, a depth of pain that he couldn't quite place. It made him hesitate for just a moment. Was she really the powerful ruler they had been told about, or was there something more to her than the stories? "Human," she said, her voice low and steady, but there was a warning in her tone. "You should not be here." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "We're here to help you," he said, trying to sound confident. "We're getting you out." The queen's lips twitched into a barely noticeable smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Help," she repeated softly, almost as if the word tasted strange on her tongue. "You think you can help me? You have no idea what you're dealing with." Jake took a step closer, unsure of what to make of her words. "We know the aliens who captured you. They've betrayed you. We can get you back to your people." Her eyes narrowed, and for the first time, Jake saw a flicker of something other than indifference in her gaze, fear, maybe. But it was gone almost as soon as it appeared, replaced by cold detachment. "I told you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Don't touch me, human." Jake froze. Her words hit him like a physical blow, and for a moment, he wasn't sure if he had heard her correctly. He glanced back at his team, but they were just as confused as he was. What did she mean? Why was she refusing their help? Harris took a cautious step forward, his weapon still raised. "Your Majesty, we're not your enemies. We just want to." "I don't need your help," she interrupted sharply, her voice rising slightly. "I don't need anyone's help. You cannot save me. And if you think you can, you are already doomed." Jake's heart raced, his instincts telling him that something was terribly wrong. The Queen's presence was suffocating, and every word she spoke seemed to twist the air around them. She was broken, that much was clear, but why? What had happened to make her so closed off, so desperate to remain alone? The Queen stood up suddenly, her movements graceful but filled with an unmistakable urgency. "Leave now," she said, her voice firm. "You're too late. You cannot change what's been done." Jake's team shifted uneasily, unsure whether to push forward or retreat. There was something unsettling about her, something they didn't fully understand. She was the Queen, and yet she was broken, betrayed, abandoned, and left to suffer alone. Jake had heard the stories, the rumors about her betrayal, but now, standing before her, he felt an unexpected sympathy. "Your Majesty," Jake tried again, his voice softer this time. "We're not leaving without you." The Queen's gaze softened for a brief moment, but it was quickly replaced by the same coldness that had been there before. "You have no idea what you're asking," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Trust me, human. It's better for you if you leave me to my fate." But it was too late to turn back now. Jake had made up his mind. He wasn't going to abandon her, no matter how dangerous or unpredictable she seemed. His team had already risked everything to come this far, and he wasn't going to fail them now. "We're not leaving without you," he repeated, more forcefully this time. The Queen stared at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Finally, she sighed, as if she had come to some kind of painful decision. "Very well," she said, her voice resigned. "But know this, once you step into my world, there is no turning back. And you will wish you had never come." With those chilling words, she led them into the unknown, and Jake couldn't shake the feeling that this mission was only just beginning. Betrayal unveiled. The dark corridors of the fortress seemed to stretch endlessly, and every step felt like they were descending deeper into something they couldn't fully understand. Jake kept his eyes locked on the Queen, who moved with the precision and grace of a predator, her every step calculated. Her silence was more oppressive than any words could have been. Jake tried to make sense of the situation, but it was like piecing together a puzzle with missing pieces. The Queen led them through hidden passageways and into a chamber that was far grander than the rest of the fortress. Inside, the walls were adorned with strange symbols, glowing softly, casting eerie shadows. At the center of the room stood a large, holographic projection, one that displayed a star map of the galaxy. But the map wasn't like anything Jake had ever seen. Planets and star systems that didn't belong in known space were scattered across it, each marked with red symbols. Jake's eyes narrowed. "What is this?" he asked, stepping closer to the projection. The Queen didn't respond right away. Instead, she stared at the map, her face hardening with an emotion Jake couldn't place. It was as if she was reliving something painful. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is the galaxy I once ruled," she said, her gaze distant. "But now, it's a prison." Jake frowned, confused. "You ruled this galaxy? I thought you were betrayed by your people." She turned to face him, her eyes piercing through him like an unseen force. "Betrayed? Yes. But not just by my people. By someone I trusted more than anyone else." Her words hung in the air, thick with meaning. Jake's heart raced. He had heard rumors, whispers of a betrayal that had shattered the Queen's power. But hearing it from her, seeing the hurt and anger in her eyes, made it real. This wasn't just about politics or power struggles. This was personal. "The one who betrayed me," she continued, her voice low and laced with bitterness, "was the one I loved. The one I thought would stand by my side, no matter what. My closest ally, my best friend. But she turned on me when I needed her the most. She used me, played me like a pawn in her own game. And when I was vulnerable, she left me to die." Jake could see the anger in her eyes, but there was also something else, a deep sadness. He'd never expected to see the Queen so broken, so human. For a moment, he wondered if he could trust her, if he could even understand the weight of what she had suffered. She wasn't just a queen anymore, she was a person who had lost everything. "I didn't just lose my crown, Jake," she added, her voice quivering slightly. "I lost myself. I lost the person I was before all of this. She shattered everything. And now, she's the one hunting me down." Jake's mind raced. If the Queen's former ally was hunting her, then that meant she was in far more danger than he had realized. Her past wasn't just a series of political betrayals, it was a deeply personal vendetta. The enemy they were up against wasn't some faceless alien empire. It was someone who knew the Queen better than anyone else, someone who had seen all of her weaknesses. "You're telling me that the person behind this, is someone you loved?" Jake asked slowly, trying to wrap his mind around the revelation. The Queen nodded, her expression grim. Yes. She was once my closest friend. We were inseparable. But that was before the artifact, before everything changed. She motioned toward the star map, her hand trembling slightly as she pointed to a distant planet. That's where the artifact is kept. The artifact that gave me my power, but also cursed me. She took it from me, betrayed me for it. Jake's eyes flickered to the planet she had pointed to. It was located on the far edge of the galaxy, beyond any known human exploration. It was a desolate place, a world that seemed to hold no significance at all, until now. The artifact? Jake repeated, his voice tinged with confusion. What is it? What does it do? The Queen's face darkened, and she took a deep breath, as if steeling herself for what she was about to reveal. It's a relic of unimaginable power, she said quietly. When my ancestors discovered it, they thought it would make them gods. But it's not a gift, it's a curse. It bonds with its wielder, giving them power beyond belief, but at a price. A price I never understood until it was too late. Jake was silent for a moment, trying to process everything. He had been expecting a rescue mission, a simple task of freeing a captive queen. But this was something else entirely. The artifact, the betrayal, the broken past, it all pointed to a story far darker than he had ever imagined. So your friend, Jake began, she took this artifact from you and used it against you. The Queen's eyes flickered with rage. Yes. She used it to control me, to manipulate me, to turn my own people against me. And now she's using it to hunt me down. Jake felt a shiver run down his spine. The stakes had just been raised. This wasn't just about freeing a queen, it was about stopping a war that had already begun, one that had been set in motion long before they had arrived. We need to stop her, Jake said, his voice firm. We need to destroy the artifact. The Queen's gaze softened for a moment, but then she shook her head. It's too late. The artifact has a mind of its own now. It controls everything. If we try to destroy it, it will destroy us all. Jake's heart sank. This was bigger than he thought. The Queen's fight wasn't just against the aliens who had betrayed her. It was against an ancient force that had the power to reshape the galaxy itself. We need to be ready, Jake said, determination hardening his resolve. And we need to keep moving. The enemy is coming for us. As the Queen turned away, leading the way down the darkened corridor, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that their mission had just gone from rescue to survival. And the price of failure would be more than any of them could bear. The unexpected escape. The Queen's footsteps echoed through the empty halls, sharp and steady. Jake followed closely, his team in tow, each soldier keeping a sharp eye on their surroundings. The oppressive silence of the fortress was starting to feel suffocating, and Jake couldn't shake the growing sense that something was wrong. It was as if the walls themselves were closing in around them. They passed through another set of blast doors, and Jake felt a subtle shift in the air. The temperature dropped, and the lights flickered. He exchanged a glance with Harris, who looked equally uneasy. Something was coming, something they weren't prepared for. Stay alert, Jake ordered, his voice low but commanding. We're not out of the woods yet. The Queen stopped abruptly, her posture stiffening as if she had sensed something as well. She turned to face them, her expression unreadable, her eyes hard as steel. We need to move quickly, she said, her voice calm but urgent. They know we're here. Before Jake could respond, a loud, mechanical hiss sounded from behind them. The doors they had just passed through began to close with a grinding noise, sealing off their only exit. Panic surged through Jake's chest, but he quickly squashed it down. This was no time to lose his cool. Move, he shouted, grabbing the Queen's arm and pulling her toward a side corridor. We need to find another way out. The Queen didn't resist, but her eyes flashed with something Jake couldn't place, fear, maybe, or something darker. She moved with the precision of someone who had been here before, navigating the twisting, unfamiliar passageways without hesitation. But the walls weren't the only danger. The sounds of footsteps grew louder behind them, a heavy, rhythmic pounding that set Jake's heart racing. They were being pursued, fast, and they were not alone. "We're not going to make it," Harris called out from behind them, his voice tinged with panic. "There's no way out of here." Jake ignored him, focusing solely on the Queen. Her face was pale, but there was no sign of fear in her eyes. She was a queen, after all, used to controlling everything around her. But even Jake could see the cracks in her calm exterior now. She was starting to unravel, and if they didn't get out soon, she might be lost to them forever. Suddenly, the Queen stopped in her tracks, holding up a hand. "This way," she commanded. Jake barely had time to register her words before she pulled them through another set of doors, this time into a darkened chamber. The doors hissed shut behind them, and the pounding of footsteps outside grew muffled. The room was cold, almost freezing, and the air tasted stale. "What is this place?" Jake asked, his voice sharp with the cold. The Queen didn't answer immediately. She was scanning the room, her eyes narrowed, as if she was searching for something. Then, with a fluid movement, she approached a large control panel on the far wall and began to work quickly, her fingers flying over the buttons. "This is a safe house," she said finally, her voice betraying a hint of uncertainty. "An old escape route I had set up, just in case. But it's not foolproof. We have to hurry." Jake's eyes flicked to the rest of the team, who were still trying to catch their breath. "What exactly are we hiding from?" he asked, his hand resting on his weapon. "Who's coming after us?" The Queen hesitated, as if weighing whether or not to share the truth. Finally, she spoke, her voice a whisper. "The mercenaries who were sent after me, they aren't just soldiers. They're something else. Something you won't understand." Jake frowned. "What do you mean by something else?" But the Queen's focus was now entirely on the control panel, her eyes scanning the screen with a mixture of frustration and desperation. "I can't explain it right now," she muttered. "But if we don't get out of here soon, we're all dead." Before Jake could respond, the lights in the room flickered, casting strange shadows against the walls. A sudden, sharp noise echoed through the chamber, the unmistakable sound of something massive crashing into the wall outside. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and the entire building seemed to groan in response. "They're here," the Queen said, her voice steady but her eyes wide with alarm. "They've breached the outer defenses. We don't have much time." Jake's pulse quickened. The Queen was right, they had no time left. But there was something else, too. The way she spoke about the mercenaries, this wasn't just about a rescue mission anymore. It wasn't even about an escape. There was a deeper, more dangerous enemy waiting for them on the other side, and Jake wasn't sure if they could survive it. "We need to move," Jake ordered, his voice commanding. "We're not going to make it through another fight like that." But the Queen shook her head. "You don't understand. You can't outrun them. You have to fight. And for that, you'll need more than just weapons." "What do you mean?" Jake asked, his voice taut with suspicion. She turned toward him, her face grave. "I mean you'll need the power to stop them. You'll need the artifact." Jake felt his stomach drop. "The artifact? But you said—" "I lied," the Queen interrupted sharply. "We need it. Without it, we don't stand a chance." Jake's mind was racing. The artifact was the source of her power, the very thing that had led to her betrayal and the chaos that followed. Could they really use it now? Could it save them? "Get ready," the Queen said, her voice turning cold once more. "We have no other choice." Before Jake could argue, she turned and ran toward another door at the far end of the room. The team followed, but the unease in Jake's gut was growing. He had no idea what they were about to face, but one thing was certain, the stakes were higher than ever before. And the fight for survival was only just beginning. The Queen's secret. Jake could feel the weight of the Queen's words pressing down on him. As they sprinted down the narrow, winding corridors of the fortress, the reality of their situation was starting to sink in. The mercenaries were closing in, and the Queen's cryptic warning about the artifact lingered in his mind. They were on the run, but they weren't just running from enemies, they were running from a force far more dangerous than anything Jake had encountered before. The Queen led them through another set of heavy doors, which opened with a hiss, revealing a vast chamber. The walls were lined with alien technology, its shimmering lights casting strange shadows across the room. At the center of the chamber stood a large, ornate pedestal, and upon it, a small, glowing object sat, an artifact that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. The moment Jake laid eyes on it, something in the pit of his stomach twisted. It was the artifact the Queen had mentioned, the one that had brought her so much power and pain. The Queen stepped forward, her eyes locked on the object. "This is it," she said softly. "The artifact that changed everything." Jake's mind raced. The Queen had said that the artifact had the power to destroy them all. But now, seeing it in person, he couldn't help but feel a strange pull toward it. It was beautiful, almost hypnotic, its glow steady and mesmerizing. But there was something else about it, something that felt wrong, like it was alive in a way that it shouldn't be. "We need it," the Queen repeated, her voice tight. "Without it, we don't have a chance." Jake took a cautious step forward, but something held him back. "But you said the artifact is cursed. That it controls you. Why would we use it now?" The Queen's gaze hardened, and she turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "Because it's the only way to stop them. The mercenaries aren't just normal soldiers. They've been enhanced, changed by the power of the artifact. And the only way to beat them is with the same power." Jake frowned. He couldn't fully understand what the Queen meant, but he could see the desperation in her eyes. This was no longer about saving her or even escaping. This was about survival, and it seemed like the Queen was asking them to step into a world of power and danger that none of them could truly comprehend. "I don't know if I can trust this," Jake said slowly. "You said it controls you. What if it controls us too?" The Queen looked away, her eyes distant. "It doesn't just control you. It tempts you. It makes you crave more power, more control, until you lose everything else. But if we don't use it, we'll die. And the galaxy will burn because of it." Harris, who had been standing silently behind Jake, stepped forward. "How do we know you're telling the truth?" His voice was filled with suspicion. "How do we know you're not lying to us, using us as pawns to get what you want?" The Queen turned her gaze on Harris, her eyes narrowing. For a moment, there was a flicker of something cold in her expression, something sharp and dangerous. Then, just as quickly, it was gone. "I don't want anything," she said quietly. "I don't want to be here. I didn't ask for any of this. But I've been left with no choice. The artifact, it's the only thing that can stop what's coming. And if we don't use it now, it'll be too late." Jake watched her carefully, sensing that there was more to her words than she was letting on. She wasn't just a broken queen trying to survive. There was a deeper fear in her eyes now, fear of what would happen if they didn't act quickly, and fear of what the artifact might do to them all. "We need to make a decision," Jake said, his voice low. "We can't keep running forever. The mercenaries are right behind us. If we don't fight back, we're all dead." The Queen nodded slowly, and for the first time, her usual coldness seemed to slip away, replaced by something far more vulnerable. "I know. I know what you're thinking. But this artifact, it's not just a weapon. It's a curse. And I'm the one who's been cursed by it." Jake's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" The Queen's voice grew softer, more vulnerable. "The artifact isn't just a source of power. It binds its user to it, changes them from the inside out. I've been trying to control it, to keep it from consuming me, but it's been too much. Every day I feel myself slipping further away from who I was. Jake's mind raced as he processed her words. The Queen wasn't just a broken leader, she was someone who had been consumed by her own power. She had been fighting a battle no one could see, a battle against an artifact that was slowly eroding her humanity. Is there a way to destroy it? Jake asked, his voice barely above a whisper. A way to end the curse? The Queen hesitated, her face clouded with a mix of regret and sorrow. There is, but it's dangerous. And it might not even work. If we try to destroy it, we could destroy everything around us. The artifact isn't just a thing, it's a part of the galaxy now. Its roots run deep, and if we cut them, we could unleash something far worse. Jake's mind was spinning. He had come here to save the Queen, to rescue her from her captivity. But now, standing before this artifact, he realized that the true battle wasn't just against the mercenaries or the Queen's enemies. It was against something much darker, a force that could change the course of history itself. I need to think, Jake said, his voice strained. We need a plan. The Queen nodded, but her eyes were filled with something that sent a chill down Jake's spine, something that felt like both hope and despair. There's no time for thinking, Jake. We're out of time. Before Jake could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the chamber, growing louder and louder. They're here, the Queen whispered, her voice cold once more. The final choice has arrived. Jake didn't have time to process what she meant. The mercenaries were closing in, and their only option now was to face the power of the artifact head-on, or face total annihilation. The coming storm. The heavy footsteps grew louder, echoing like a countdown in the vast chamber. Jake's heart pounded in his chest as he instinctively stepped forward, his hand tightening around the grip of his weapon. The Queen stood motionless, her eyes fixed on the artifact as if it was both her salvation and her doom. She had told them the artifact was cursed, but now it seemed as if it was the only thing standing between them and certain death. Jake couldn't help but feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The air was thick with tension, and the room seemed to pulse with the energy of the artifact, as though it were aware of the danger closing in. He had no idea what the artifact could do, but the Queen's warning echoed in his mind, it's not just a weapon. It's a curse. Suddenly, a cold voice sliced through the silence. I knew you couldn't resist it, the voice said. You're weak, all of you. You're nothing but pawns. Jake spun around, instinctively raising his weapon, but it was too late. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall, imposing, and covered in dark, reflective armor. The mercenaries had arrived, and they were led by none other than the Queen's former best friend, the one who had betrayed her. She stepped forward, her face hidden behind the helmet, but there was no mistaking her presence. The Queen stiffened, her hand trembling as she reached out toward the artifact. For a moment, Jake thought she might grab it, but instead, she pulled back, her face a mixture of fury and sorrow. You, the Queen whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. How could you do this? After everything we shared, after everything we fought for. The woman, once a trusted ally, gave a cruel smile, the edges of her lips curling up in something that resembled pity. You were always too soft, Alara. Too trusting. This galaxy is about power, not weakness. You should have learned that sooner. Jake watched in shock as the Queen's expression hardened, her eyes darkening. You used me, she said quietly, her voice cold as ice. You used me to gain power, and now you've come to finish what you started. Finish what I started? The woman laughed bitterly, the sound echoing around the chamber. No, Alara. I came to take what was mine. This galaxy doesn't belong to you anymore. You lost the right to rule the moment you became weak. The Queen took a step forward, her hand still hovering over the artifact. The air between them crackled with energy. Jake didn't understand the full scope of their history, but he could feel the weight of it now. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was the end of everything the Queen had once been. You don't know what you're dealing with, the Queen said through clenched teeth. The artifact isn't just power. It's a force of destruction. If you think you can control it, you're wrong. It will consume you just like it consumed me. The woman's gaze flickered for a moment, uncertainty creeping into her eyes. But then, her expression firmed, and she shook her head. You're just scared, Alara. Scared of the power you gave up. It's time to embrace what you are. Come with me. Join me, and together, we'll rule this galaxy. The artifact will be ours. We'll make them all bow to us. The Queen's eyes darkened. You really think you can control it? She asked, her voice soft but filled with cold contempt. You don't understand. You never did. The artifact is a curse. And you're about to feel it. Without warning, the woman raised her hand, and a surge of dark energy erupted from the walls, sending a shockwave through the room. Jake and his team were knocked off their feet, and for a split second, he thought they were done for. But the Queen didn't fall. She stood, her eyes blazing with something that Jake couldn't quite place, a fire, a desperation, but also a finality. She wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. She was fighting for something far deeper than herself. You've already lost, the Queen said, her voice cutting through the chaos. She took a deep breath, her hand still hovering over the artifact. You don't understand what you've awakened. With one swift motion, she slammed her hand onto the pedestal, and the artifact glowed brighter than it ever had before. The ground beneath them trembled, and the chamber was filled with a low, rumbling sound. Jake felt it deep in his chest, as if the very core of the galaxy was waking up. And then, everything went still. The Queen's former friend took a step back, her eyes wide with disbelief. No. No, this isn't possible, she shouted, her voice cracking. You can't. But it was too late. The artifact had already begun to take control. A wave of energy exploded outward, and the mercenaries were thrown back, their bodies slamming against the walls with sickening force. Jake had to shield his eyes from the blinding light that filled the room. Through the haze, he saw the Queen standing tall, her face etched with determination. The artifact wasn't just glowing, it was alive, pulsing with energy, and it seemed to be feeding off her. She had become one with it, the power of the artifact flowing through her veins like fire. The woman who had betrayed her stumbled forward, her hands raised in desperation. No. You can't control it, she screamed. The Queen's lips curled into a cold smile. I don't need to control it, she said, her voice low and calm. I just needed to understand it. With a final burst of energy, the artifact sent a shockwave that cracked the walls of the chamber. The air was filled with a deafening roar, and everything went dark. The final betrayal. When the world came back into focus, Jake felt as though he had been struck by lightning. The energy from the artifact still hummed in the air, vibrating through his bones. His vision blurred, but through the haze, he could make out the scene in front of him, the Queen, standing tall at the center of the chamber, her hand still outstretched toward the artifact. The light from the artifact bathed her in a strange, otherworldly glow, making her look both magnificent and terrifying. It was as if the very galaxy was bowing to her. But around her, the mercenaries lay scattered, their bodies twitching in the aftermath of the blast. Jake didn't know whether they were dead or unconscious, but he didn't have time to check. His attention was fixed on the Queen. The room was silent, save for the soft hum of the artifact and the distant crackling of the damaged walls. The Queen's former best friend, her betrayer, lay on the ground, barely moving. Her armor was cracked, and the defiance in her eyes had turned into something far more fragile, fear. Alara, please, the woman gasped, her voice hoarse. This isn't you. You can't control it. You'll lose everything. You've already lost yourself. The Queen's gaze shifted to the woman on the floor, and for a brief moment, Jake thought he saw a flicker of hesitation in her eyes. But then the hesitation was gone, replaced by cold determination. No, you don't understand, the Queen said, her voice unrecognizable. It was laced with power now, almost otherworldly, as if the artifact had fully consumed her. I didn't lose anything. I gained everything. She stepped forward, her eyes never leaving the woman who had once been her closest ally. You were my friend. But you're the one who betrayed me. You're the one who turned your back when I needed you most. The woman trembled, her fingers twitching as she tried to push herself up, but she was too weak. Please. Alara, we can still fix this. We can. Fix this. The Queen's voice cut through the air, icy and unforgiving. It's too late for fixing anything. You had your chance, and you threw it away. Now, there's only one thing left to do. Jake took a step forward, unable to remain silent any longer. He wasn't sure what had happened to the Queen, but the transformation he had witnessed was terrifying. The woman who had been a broken, vulnerable prisoner was now something else entirely. The artifact had not just given her power, it had changed her. And the way she looked at her betrayer now, with no trace of mercy, sent a chill down Jake's spine. You're not her anymore, Jake said, his voice firm but uncertain. This power, it's consuming you. You're becoming the very thing you feared. The Queen turned to face him, her eyes sharp and filled with an emotion he couldn't quite name. You don't understand, Jake. You couldn't possibly understand. The power the artifact gives is not just physical. It's transcendent. It transcends the past, the pain, the betrayal. It's freedom. Jake's chest tightened. Freedom? Or is it just a prison in another form? The Queen's lips curled into a smile, but it wasn't the smile of the woman he had tried to rescue. It was cold, detached, like a predator who had already claimed victory. I was a prisoner before. But now, I'm free. Before Jake could respond, there was a movement from the floor. The betrayer, weak and struggling, had reached for a weapon hidden beneath her armor. With trembling hands, she raised it toward the Queen. No! Jake shouted, instinctively leaping forward to stop her. But it was too late. The woman fired. A burst of energy shot through the air, a blinding flash of light. The Queen staggered back, her body jerking as the blast hit her. Jake's heart stopped. For a moment, he thought she was done for. But then, as if nothing had happened, she stood tall again, her eyes blazing with a new fury. She reached out with a hand, and the air around her seemed to ripple, a dark energy swirling in her palm. The room grew cold, and the very walls trembled with the force of the power she was unleashing. You think you can stop me? The Queen's voice was now a low growl. You think you can control me? The betrayer's weapon slipped from her grasp as she fell to her knees, unable to even stand under the weight of the Queen's newfound power. Alara, please. But the Queen wasn't listening. With a final, effortless motion, she raised her hand, and the energy surged forward. There was no explosion, no sound. Just the sudden, horrifying realization that the woman who had once been her friend was gone. The betrayer's body crumpled to the floor, lifeless. And the Queen stood over her, her expression unreadable. Jake stumbled back, his mind racing. The Queen had done it. She had destroyed her former ally without hesitation. The betrayal she had suffered had shaped her, twisted her into something unrecognizable. And now, she had become the very thing she had once fought against. Alara, Jake said, his voice shaking. What have you done? The Queen didn't answer at first. She stood still, her eyes focused on the fallen body of the woman she had once trusted. Her gaze softened, just for a moment, and Jake thought he saw a flicker of regret. But then it was gone, replaced by something far darker. I did what had to be done, she said coldly. She was weak. She couldn't understand the power. But now, I control it. Jake realized, with a sinking feeling, that this wasn't about survival anymore. This wasn't about saving the Queen or escaping the fortress. It was about something much bigger, a battle for control, for the very essence of what it meant to hold power. And now, the queen had made her choice. The price of power. The room was silent. The only sound was the faint hum of the artifact, its glow pulsing like a heartbeat, and the quiet shuffling of the remaining soldiers as they gathered themselves. Jake stood in the center, still in shock from the events that had just unfolded. The queen, Alara, had crossed a line. The woman who had been betrayed and broken by those she trusted was now a force of unimaginable power, and Jake realized, with a sinking feeling, that this power might be her undoing. He looked down at the fallen body of the woman who had once been her best friend. The queen hadn't just defeated her, she had annihilated her. And there was no turning back now. Is this it? Jake asked, his voice hoarse, though it wasn't clear if he was speaking to Alara or to himself. Is this who you are now? The queen's head turned slowly, her eyes locking onto him. There was no hesitation in her gaze, no sign of the woman who had once been full of hope and conviction. Instead, her eyes were cold, filled with an unsettling calm. This is who I must be, she said quietly, her voice carrying an eerie finality. The galaxy is a battlefield. And I will not be its victim anymore. I will be its ruler. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't the same person he had first met, the broken, vulnerable queen. The artifact had not just given her power. It had transformed her into something else entirely. Something darker. The room seemed to close in on him. His mind raced, trying to comprehend everything he had witnessed. The power of the artifact was undeniable, and it was clear that the queen had embraced it fully. But at what cost? You don't understand, she said, almost as if reading his thoughts. The artifact isn't just about power. It's about control. And the price of control is everything you thought you were. You think I've lost myself, but in truth, I've found my true strength. Jake's heart ached for her. She had been broken, betrayed by the very people she had trusted, but now, she had become something unrecognizable. The woman who had once been a leader was now consumed by a hunger for domination, and Jake knew that no one, no matter how powerful, could escape the price of such power forever. But there was something else in her eyes. A flicker of something vulnerable, something that hadn't been completely erased. Jake wasn't sure if it was hope or guilt, but it was there, buried deep beneath the surface. And for a moment, he wondered if there was still a way to save her. We can still stop this, Jake said, his voice rising with conviction. The artifact is destroying you, Alara. You don't have to let it consume you. Her lips curled into a small, bitter smile. You still don't get it, do you? She said, her voice low and filled with a strange, detached amusement. It's too late. The artifact has already consumed me. And now, it's going to change everything. As she spoke, the room around them seemed to respond, vibrating with energy. The artifact's glow intensified, casting long, dark shadows across the chamber. Jake could feel the air growing heavier, as if the power radiating from the queen was warping reality itself. The galaxy itself was beginning to bend under her control. Jake's team was now standing in the corner, exchanging uneasy glances. Harris, his voice trembling, stepped forward. What do we do now, Captain? He asked, his eyes wide with fear. She's not the same anymore. She's gone too far. Jake didn't respond immediately. His thoughts were racing, but one thing was clear, they couldn't defeat Alara, not the way she was now. Not without risking everything. The artifact had bound her to its power, and she had embraced it. The energy in the room pulsed like the beat of a drum, and with every heartbeat, Jake could feel the world shifting around him. We don't have a choice, Jake said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. We need to destroy the artifact. Alara's eyes locked onto him with an almost predatory intensity. Destroy it, she repeated, the word dripping with contempt. You think you can just take this from me? You think you can take my power? Jake's mind whirled. The artifact had to be destroyed, but he knew it wouldn't be easy. The power it gave Alara was overwhelming, and even if they somehow succeeded, the consequences would be catastrophic. But there was no other option. If they didn't act, she would reshape the galaxy in her image, and there would be nothing left to stop her. "I don't want to do this," Jake said, his voice barely audible. "But I will." The Queen laughed softly, but there was no warmth in her voice. "You'll try," she said, her smile fading into a look of cold determination. "But the galaxy is mine now. The artifact has given me the power to control it all. I am its master." Without warning, she extended her hand toward Jake, and the ground beneath him shook violently. He stumbled backward, his legs giving way as the force of the artifact's energy blasted toward him. But before he could fall, a sudden rush of wind swept through the chamber, pulling him back. Harris was there, grabbing him just in time to steady him. "Captain!" Harris shouted. "We need to move. Now!" Jake's heart raced. The Queen wasn't just controlling the artifact, she was controlling the very fabric of reality around them. The ground trembled, and the walls cracked as the force of her power surged outward. It wasn't just about defeating her anymore. It was about stopping the entire galaxy from being reshaped by a power that no one could control. "We need to destroy the artifact," Jake repeated, his voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. "Before it's too late." But as they turned to make their move, the Queen's laughter filled the room, echoing off the walls like a chilling premonition. "You're too late, Jake," she said softly. "This is the beginning of a new era. The galaxy will bend to my will. And nothing, not even you, can stop me now." Jake's chest tightened. There was no going back. The battle had begun, and the price of power had been paid. Now, it was time to fight for the future of the galaxy, or watch it burn. Let me know if you'd like any changes or further twists in the story.